The story you are about to hear is true. The names have been changed, but the situation happened to me and my family when I was 9 years old. The visuals for the story are to help paint the picture of what was happening. If you are easily scared, do not watch. The year I was 9, we moved to a small town right before school was over. It was my sister Mildred, my mother Lee, my father Jack, and I. We had been living in a camp trailer parked at my maternal grandparents' one-bedroom apartment prior in a large town before uprooting once again. We moved a lot, but this time was different. My father was back to work and we were moving into a large house. Large for us, that is. It had one bedroom on the main floor and the attic was finished, with 2 rooms on either side of a narrow stairway leading up to it. On one side was my sister, Mildred's room. On her side there was a small cutout in the wall overlooking the stairs, about 2 feet off of the ground. The stairs were positioned right next to the kitchen, away from the other room and bathroom enough that you couldn't hear what was going on up the stairs unless you were right next to them. I woke up one Saturday and heard my mom telling my dad, "Jack, I know you don't believe me, but there was somebody upstairs yesterday." I thought it was the kids at first, but they were in school. My father, being the skeptic that he is, just disregarded this as her being in a new place and the house was settling. Thought it was strange, but cartoons took my attention almost immediately. After a couple weeks, it was summer break, no more school. My uncle and his family had come to stay with us during the summer, as they did most years. So my 2 male cousins, Tom and Tim, stayed in my room with me, and my female cousin Nancy stayed with Mildred. One night we were all up playing Uno between the 2 rooms in the attic. My sister's friend Janice was there, so there were 3 girls and 3 boys, all between the age of 8 and 11. Rowdy children, and we were very loud. About 10 p.m. our parents told us it was time to go to bed. It was summer, for crying out loud. So we all agreed to stay up as late as possible and just wait for the parents to fall asleep and continue our game of Uno. About midnight, we stopped hearing anyone downstairs, so we sent Nancy downstairs to check and make sure that our parents had in fact went to bed. When we were sure they were all asleep, we got up and started playing again with our lanterns as lights. We played for about an hour before we started to hear footsteps downstairs in the kitchen. We all thought we were busted, turned off the lanterns, and went to our respective beds. I remember thinking of the punishment my parents would have for a lot of us for disobeying their orders as I heard the footsteps coming up the stairs. While I laid there awaiting the incoming trouble, I started thinking, why are they walking so slow and not talking? My dad would usually be pretty hot and at least be yelling by now. The footsteps stopped for what seemed like a full minute right about the halfway mark of the stairs. I thought maybe they're just waiting to hear if we really are awake. Sitting now, as an adult, I wonder how we could even hear the footsteps so clearly. The stairs were pretty new and very well carpeted. The noise was like stomping on an old deck. As a kid, I was just worried if I was going to have to write sentences or worse, get a spanking. But then the steps seemed to start descending the stairs. This was very odd. None of our parents would have just turned around after hearing us being disobedient. After about 5 minutes of not hearing anyone, I turned to Tim and said, "Hey, are you awake?" He said, "Yeah." We both looked towards the stairs. Tom popped his head up and said, "They must not care, I guess. Let's see if the girls are still awake." We all crawled over to the stairs and whispered, "Hey, you guys up?" And they all replied, "Yeah, let's play." It wasn't 10 minutes into the next game of Uno before we heard the steps again. We all did the same as before. We jumped right into our beds, but agreed that I would keep looking at the stairs to see which one of our parents it was. So I stayed silent, staring at the top stair, waiting while the footsteps got closer. They were so slow this time, but so loud. I couldn't believe that one of our parents was that loud. It's like they were trying to wake the whole house, I thought. I waited for what seemed like an eternity until it stopped. The footsteps stopped short of the top stair. I wasn't a brave kid, quite the opposite really, but I was very curious, and something was off. So I looked at Tim and said, "Come look with me." To which he shook his head in disbelief. "No frickin' way, dude," he whispered. "You want to get spanked? Be my guest." I held off for a few more minutes until I couldn't anymore. It was to the point that I didn't care about the trouble. I just had to know who was there. I slowly slinked my little 9-year-old body toward the landing. While on the way, I could hear somebody wrestling from my sister's side of the attic. Apparently Mildred had to find out as well. She had a cutout in her wall, so she was able just to poke her head over. I could see her slowly appear over the edge, looking at me as I wormed my way to the stairs. We both looked down at the same time. No one. No one was there at all. There had been no movement, no footsteps for a while now, and no way anyone could have made it down those stairs without making at least some noise. It was baffling. As Mildred and I looked back and forth at the stairs, then at each other, Tim, Tom, Nancy, and Janice all slowly appeared with us. Tim quite loudly said, "What the heck?" At this point, the footsteps started descending again, slowly, slower than before. With our eyes adjusting to the little bit of moonlight that was shining through both windows in each room, I could start to notice imprints in the carpet from 5 stairs from the top. There were only about 10 stairs in total, so it was halfway up. At this point, I just froze. Nancy jumped back into her bed, as did Tom, but Mildred, Janice, Tim, and I all stayed and watched as this invisible thing edged closer and closer, each step sounding louder in my head. It was like a drum was being banged in my right ear. I couldn't look away or pull back. All of us were just entranced. Statues in the moonlight, seeing footprints appear from nowhere heading our way. As this invisible visitor approached the top stair, I began to see an outline of what appeared to be a large man in clothes from an era long since past. No real facial features, just an overcoat, stringy hair coming from below a rounded cap. Tim grabbed my arm. I knew he could see it too. I really just wanted to flee, get up and run, but I was paralyzed. I couldn't scream or move. I just sat on my knees in horror. The man took the last step up, staring straight ahead the entire time as if we weren't even there. For a while he was statuesque. He made no movements, said no words. I don't even believe he had a mouth from what I could see. He was just staring straight ahead. Mildred, who had her hands over her mouth almost the entire time, looked at me, and I looked back. Both of our eyes were full of fear. Tim, though, he started to move his hand close to the man's leg. I couldn't believe he was doing this. I couldn't move to stop him. Right as his hand permeated the man's leg, it was as if he was just shoving it through dense fog. All of a sudden, Tim went flying backwards, holding his arm. I looked up at the man very quickly, stared me, and my eyes leaned down in my face. His was still not defined. He had no mouth, no nose, just milky white orbs for eyes. But for lack of a better word, I could feel him shouting in my face. At which point I was free, jumped back into my room. We all did. As fast as I could turn back around and look, the man was gone. Tim laid there, teary-eyed. Tom and I both felt his hand, and it was cold as ice. He didn't say a word about it. He wouldn't. Even now, I've asked him. He will not talk of this. We only lived in the big house for 3 months, but we never saw the man again there. Every now and then I still hear the footsteps when I'm ready to sleep. And I can still see that face, eye to eye, with the man on the stairs.